Okay, Conrad. Money.
Yes, money.
You had some ideas about it.
Well, I've noticed that there seems to be bubbling in the background a lot of what you might call charitable funds that are becoming available for projects that are of social benefit, greater benefit. And it just made me think that uh, if we had some kind of merchant bank that had funds available for development projects, might it be a reasonable thing to do to pay for experts to help projects, particularly in emerging countries, to make sure that these projects are successful? Because, I don't know, the World Bank and international banking organizations really seem to find it difficult to be successful in emerging nations, especially. And I wonder why that is, because certainly people like the World Bank have got plenty of clever people, haven't they? They've got experts of all sorts, and I'm not sure how they are applied and how they work in these projects. So I guess it's to do with money, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure about it. So I quite fancy trying it. I don't know how our finance man will think about that. What do you think about that? Probably not very much, but I don't know.
I think the feelings that I've had about handling money and experiences from the past about handling money is that it's money is one of those things that can be of great benefit, but it also can be of great, opportunity to lead you astray and to lose your bearings. You see that with the unhappiness of some of the richer and wealthier people, that they can't see past their own wealth.
Yeah.
And that wealth clouds everything that they do. And yeah, the search for money is also that kind of clouds out everything that you do. You forget that you and that you're a human being and those kind of things. So I think handling money requires a certain amount of, I would call, self-discipline and clarity. And I think if you can have that principle of clarity relating to it, then I think you can handle almost any amount of money. I mean, we've handled a lot of money in the multi-millions anyway, and you can see that it has opportunities, but it also leads you down other paths that, if you kind of analyze what was going on in your brain, your brain, my brain, at any one time, there's probably 10 different things that we could think of that we would like to do if we had the money. And actually, if we had the money, maybe 8 of them are not particularly good ideas. Maybe they're come from one place or another inside oneself, which isn't great. But the other ones are good. And I think the way I see money is that it's an energy, and that it's kind of project related. So money doesn't come to you just because you want money. It has to be for something. And it's that for something that you create that opens up a doorway that has the potential of bringing the energy into it, of which includes money. And it's not just money, it's energies, skill, expertise, opportunity, all those kind of things. So to me, money is a part of the general energy that you need to come into the project. But to me, it needs to be specific.
Well, so far, the projects have all been about making more money. And I just wonder if the motivation behind it were different, if different kinds of money would come and make it less.
Well, it's interesting what you say about charitable money, and there is a lot of charitable money around, and I think once let's not call it charitable money, because I would think it's non-aligned money. It's non. I mean, if you probably average that, the amount of money that's in the world, probably more of it is owned by governments, state institutions, institutions of all sorts, which are not necessarily of a commercial nature. So there's a lot of money around. I mean, I see that even, in Ireland, there's money. The government managed to find, if it wants to take it, I mean, they just do this now. They want to take in, 10,000 refugees a month. They can make the money available. They can conjure it up out of the air, and suddenly it comes, and they take over this, they take over that, and the money is there.
Yeah,
It doesn't actually make sense from a commercial point of view, but it's something that follows the aim of of the project. The project in that case is finding accommodation for refugees. It's not saying that commercial operations, that's what they generally do. They say, okay, we're going to do that, but then they look around to the commercial people and say, this is what we want to do. Can you make this happen for us? So they commandeer this hotel and that hotel, and they get a contract for this amount of money, that amount of money, and the commercial organizations can profit from it. So there's a complex relationship between the government money. Charitable money, I suppose, is supposed to be just for the welfare of the people, but I guess that's part of the same kind of thing. There still needs to be some aim. There needs to be some project that can be described that brings a focus on that. So when you talk about the prospect of coming into a large sum of money, what do you do with it? Well, I think it's a very sound idea that you say is that you should treat it as a bank, that you hold this money in trust for the general welfare of humanity. But it then requires you to be cognizant of the responsibilities associated with that, and not think, oh yeah, now I've got lots of money, I can buy that Ferrari or buy that bigger house or whatever. That's not the purpose of it. I mean, you can get you can get personal enrichment from it, possibly, if you're successful in handling the money. So that's the kind of question. If you suddenly found yourself in receipt of $1 billion, Conrad, what would you do with it tomorrow? What would be your take me through your actions?
My wish list.
Well, what would you do with it if it was your responsibility to handle $1 billion? It's a lot of money.
It is, yeah. But we've been working for some time on a number of projects that have got social benefit, and that's the kind of stuff that I would be keen to see the money invested in. I mean, we've looked at regeneration projects where communities, particularly where we live in the north of England, there are lots of communities that were part of the Industrial Revolution, if you like, where the industry has gone away and left the communities wondering what to do. And I think I'm particularly interested in regeneration and helping communities to partly own the industry or the development that might take place, or get the benefit of it anyway. If we look at particularly, say, the east side of Sheffield, which was heavily into making steel, and lost sort of 40,000 jobs when the steel industry left. I mean, that sort of 10 square miles of Sheffield is still semi-derelict. It's beginning to get filled up with tin sheds and things, but actually it doesn't really have a clear direction. And it seems to be more of the same old stuff. And I think there's an opportunity in a place like that to do something a bit differently and try and put in real estate that's maybe owned by a charity, so that the earnings from the real estate can be used for wider social benefit. So I'm really interested in that. And once you start looking at property and building hotels and conferencing facility and housing schemes and anything that might be appropriate for the area, a billion doesn't go that far, does it? You know better than me.
Well, ramp it up 1,000 times, make it 1 trillion, you know, so that you don't hit the buffer on it.
Yeah. Well, I think that the idea is worthy of greater things, and I think if it started to be put in place, I think more money might come to help it along. And yeah, I think it's a good idea.
So social benefit, regeneration, ownership of real estate.
Yeah.
You're finding some commercial, sympathetic commercial uses that help with generation, but generate money. Yeah. So where do you start? You know, over the weekend, $1 billion came into your bank account. What do you do? This is Monday morning. What do you do? Where do you start?
Well, I mean, as you know, I've been looking at the east side of Sheffield for some time, and I would team up with the local surveyors and buy property, buy the derelict, rundown properties that are there, and I guess chop the area up into bite-sized chunks and buy property in each of those chunks and try to redevelop them in such a way that they should actually make more money, and that could be used for doing similar things in other places. I mean, we've looked at different parts of this east of Sheffield, Athercliffe, and we see half a dozen potential projects there that each need, you know, tens of millions of pounds to do something. And so if we're serious about doing it, we've got to buy an interest or buy old buildings, buy land and redevelop it. And that's what I think I'd be interested in doing. Yeah, so that's that.
So I would ask a question that, okay, you are interested in regenerating an old area, which had its heyday in what you can only call now an old technology. I mean, it was based on the coal industry, the availability of cheap energy, you know, and the need for steel and iron, that kind of stuff. That's actually where the prosperity of that kind of, and it produced its own environmental problems. You know, it probably wasn't a particularly healthy place to live in, you know, when they're burning so much coal. People going down.
That's why they built it on the east side of Sheffield, because the prevailing wind came from the west, and all the hazardous smoke and was blown away from where the wealthier people were living on the west. So you're right. I mean, there were consequences to that technology.
So what I would say is that was the reason why place was in decline. So are you going to try and recreate a coal industry or steel industry,
No,
or is there some other opportunity?
well, I think I have this theory that places are like people, and they've each got some kind of God-given thing. But if you can find out what that is, and you can build your development around that, then you've got a good chance of being more successful, if you like. And when I walked around the east side of Sheffield, I felt that the hidden ingredient, if you like, was this whole area of health and well-being. And I found that Sheffield had tremendous amount of expertise in health and well-being, how to look after people's health and well-being. And when I started to look further into it, I found that the universities had been doing research in all areas of health, how to improve humans' health and well-being. And yes, I thought, well, this is some kind of knowledge that we ought to share. This place ought to share, build upon and share with the world, because it's something, in many respects, it's more important than steel, and has got a long life associated with it that steel didn't have. I mean, steel was good for 50 or 100 years until the new technology came along, or people in other parts of the world could do it cheaper. But health and well-being is going to be with us as long as people are around, and it covers quite a lot of areas. So, and it's interesting that Sheffield, this side of Sheffield, has started to adopt this theme of health and well-being, and begin to feel that, or recognise that the university has got this knowledge base that has grown over 30 or 40 years to be as good as anywhere, really, and can be improved further, and that it can be exploited for the benefit of the city and the people. So, yeah, I think, and I think other places have got other things that can be used, and I think it's worth exploring that. If you go to a different place, you know, what is it that that place has got that can be used for the benefit of that place and for humanity in a wider sense? Because if you can make something or share something, that's a means of helping people to thrive, the communities to thrive. They need work and they need money. They have to create something that everybody else wants or wants to buy, so that so that it has value to that community.
So what a couple of things there come to mind. One is what is it specifically on the east side of Sheffield that makes it ideal for a centre of health and well-being? That's one. You say, you know, that's part of, you know, is that some intrinsic thing that is doesn't have a physical manifestation, or is it a product of something that, you know, part of the geography, or you know, what is that?
I think that Sheffield has just realised that over the years, its universities and research establishments have started to find knowledge about people's health and well-being that they didn't have before. And maybe some of that is due to the fact that they were involved in health harming industries.
I see, yeah. So I can understand that. So, you know, Sheffield was, if you like, in the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. They came into it almost first, with all these kind of industries. So this is the kind of next thing about when you get past that, you know, it's health and well-being. So that I understand that. That's
and it's got the space because it was so large. You know, when the industry left 30, 40 years ago, when it just left this 10 square miles of the city that's just derelict. And, you know, even recently people our young people have visited the place and said to me, wasn't Sheffield rebuilt after the war? You know, the Second World War that finished in 1946. And because and so there was a space, there's a big space there that can be filled by something new. And I think Sheffield's been looking for this new thing since it lost the steel industry, in much the same way as, I don't know, other northern cities are looking for new things since the textile businesses left them, you know. And yeah, so that's one of the reasons. And I think, as I said, the universities are full of these experts, and they've gradually built up this base of knowledge which competes with anywhere in the world. And if they could share it, people would come to share their knowledge of health and well-being. And because of our involvement in hotels in the past, I thought, well, if we're going to build hotels, wouldn't it be sensible to build hotels that had a purpose and we could fill them up rather than just have something that sits at the side of the road? Why don't we have hotels that are built around this concept of sharing knowledge about health and well-being? And there's plenty of space on the east side of Sheffield to build a world-class conferencing facility. And if only the departments in the universities put on weekly conferences to share knowledge about the latest things in genetic engineering, say, or how to deal with the latest COVID tragedy that's going on around the world. But there's more than that, much more than that that's around. And this, and if you're thinking about a world-class conferencing facility, well, you've got to look at places like that are already doing that kind of thing, having conference centres to attract people from around the world that are big enough. You know, I don't know, Las Vegas, Chicago, Dubai, they build these sort of international conferencing facilities. And so there's no point in building a couple of 150 bedroom hotels and a meeting room. You've got to do something that's going to grab the world's attention, in my view. And certainly we're capable of that with our engineering skills and our, and the space that's available and the content that we can provide. Fantastic, really. I think it eliminates a lot of the risk associated with it, because councils here in Britain are always looking. There was a time, probably in the 60s, when councils thought, oh, well, if we build a conference centre, Harrogate was one, where they built this big conference facility that's still there. And everybody thought at the time, well, let's see what happens, because there were lots of hotels in Harrogate, because it was a spa town. And but the conference centre didn't really work. It's still there, but I don't know that it's hit because it didn't have the content. You know, the people that wanted the space had to bring their own content, their own ideas for what they were going to have a conference about, which of course is okay, but you're up against all the other conference centres that are just a space for lots of people to meet without any reason for being there. I've spoken to a few health professionals about the kind of things that could be included in this international centre for sharing knowledge about health. And you could build operating theatres. A surgeon talked to me about it. He said how, you know, robotic operating theatres are coming about now, and he said we need places where surgeons can get the training and witness and work with robotics to improve what's going on. We thought this kind of place would be good, sharing that kind of knowledge. So here we go.
So
I spent another $1 billion.
So well, before you actually spend $1 billion, I would ask the question: who's going to spend it? and
Well, it would be owned by a charity.
who is involved in the initiative. And
It would
I
be
think
owned by a charity. I talked earlier about a charity that would own the real estate. Well, this charity would own this conferencing facility, and people would come to visit it to get knowledge and share their knowledge. I mean, universities and health professionals all around the world sort of do this thing anyway. But we've tried to make it purpose-built to satisfy health professionals in a way that conventional hotel meeting places don't have all the facilities that might be required.
so. What would be the role and the relationship between this charity, say, and Sheffield City Council or South Yorkshire, regional council, or even the universities? What's the relationship between this charity and these quasi-government bodies?
Yeah, well, the charity would have to engage with the local authority and sell the idea to the local authority and the universities. And I think I've already talked to the universities about this basic idea, and they really like the idea. And if the money was available, I think they'd like it even more. I think they would each be encouraged and paid to put on conferences every week of the year. I mean, there are thousands of people involved in research in the two Sheffield research establishments and Sheffield universities and others. There are other organisations doing research apart from the university. And of course, it would be sensible to get them involved at a very early stage so that they would buy into the idea that this is something that is worthwhile and that they could share. Both universities do have conferencing facilities of a lesser nature, and they do hold meetings and bring people in from internationally. But the facilities aren't very good. They're okay, but they're not very good. They're not world class, if you like. And I think if we're going to make this a world class, attention grabbing place, that the architecture has to be appropriate for that, and the conferencing facility for 2,000 or 3,000 people has to be fitting, for it. It's got to be right. And so the councils would have to be involved. They probably own the land that might be used or could identify where it would. The infrastructure has to be good if you're building something of this magnitude. The universities have to be engaged with. They all have to be engaged with. But I think the credibility gap is always, where's the money coming from? Have you got the money? And we decided we'd talk a bit about the money, but that's always the first question. Whenever you go and see anybody about anything, they always say, well, where's the money coming from? And I do say to them, well, actually, it's the project that attracts the money. No, you don't. Of course, you need money to deliver the project, but the project is the thing that attracts the money. And, regeneration of the east side of Sheffield and a conferencing facility within that, a worthy project. Now, I think a lot of money could be made from this international conferencing facility. People would pay in much the same way as they pay for a hotel. But if the net earnings from that would be sufficient to make a contribution, a significant contribution to the local social, what should we say, needs, because there's lots of needs in Sheffield. And also to subsidise, to help to bring in people who otherwise couldn't afford it. It's really important that we get the guys in from wherever to hear about this, and it would be good to make it possible for them to come in, if necessary, pay their airfare and pay the hotel bill. And that could be done if it was a charity that owned the overall scheme. So yeah, lot to do, but it's doable. I think it's a good message and a good project. Actually. And then
So,
it's an essential ingredient because other things would fall out of it. You know, the university departments, research departments would come out in much the way they started to do that now with the Advanced Wellbeing Research Centre and the food research place as well, coming out into the east side of Sheffield. I think a lot more of them would come out if the resources were there. And other industries would come to sit alongside this kind of international conferencing facility. Because the health professionals from around the world are coming every week. So why wouldn't they want to be there? To wave the flag for their pharmaceuticals or their other health-related products. Yeah.
the other point that I would make about the focus that you're putting this on, which is health and well-being, to me that is a very nebulous attribute. It's not one of the, how can I say it? It's not on the top 10 of existential risks currently facing mankind, like climate change, or food security, energy security, population, all those kind of things. It's not in that top 10. So it's in that top 10 where money is being spent, and there is a focus on that, which is really, this is why I try to view this feedamillion as being, if you like, it's within the health and well-being orbit of interest, but it is more specific about setting a target for something that people can see. Oh yeah, if you feed 1 million people and you could do that from one location, you could do it cheaper than busing it in from Bangladesh or Chile or whatever. That sign me up. Whereas if you said, yeah, well, we want to invest in the health and well-being of the people of Yorkshire, well, that's fine. But what is a product of health and well-being, or if health and well-being is your eventual aim, what is the arrow that you use to deliver health and well-being? Is it health and well-being, or is it the fact that people have financial security, they have something to do, they have work, or a viable business environment? So these things I think you need to have a connection with. So so that's, I think, where I think feedamillion could sit within that health and well-being agenda, which sits within the field of regeneration and of finding a new purpose when the old purpose has declined. And this is actually a fundamental human response, actually, is that you can say that what is it that the world is about? Well, more than anything else, the world is about change. And that means what was true yesterday is not necessarily true today.
That's true, isn't it?
So what you've got to be able to promote is you've got to promote adaptability, and to be able to take long-term aims and to be able to create short-term aims, and therefore create projects. So so this is the thing, I've upped it from 1 billion to 1 trillion, came into the bank account over the weekend. This is 9 o'clock, this is 10:30 on the Monday morning. Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call, Conrad? So I'm interested in, and where would you start? Or would you suddenly think, I need a holiday for a few weeks to think about it?
So I'd start with, as I said, I'd start with the regeneration of this place because I've looked at it with a bit of care, and I think it would attract other places, you know. And if you spend a few billion in each place, it doesn't take long before you start. I mean, if you look at places like Detroit, look at how that collapsed when their industry left. I mean, that's a world class regeneration project. I don't think there's anything much bigger.
So the first thing you do then, you want to acquire some real estate, actually to get what do they call it? Skin in the game.
Yes.
So you know this. I remember we found this with House of Grey, if you remember back then.
Yes. They didn't take any notice.
The key date was with Historic Scotland and Scottish Enterprise, who basically said, we don't want to work with you guys because you're plonkers. They didn't actually say that, but that was
they did say we don't have any, well, I don't know, stake in the game.
No, absolutely. So then when you make the call and say, well, actually, you got to work with us because we just bought it. You know, and they check it up and say, find it, you have bought it, therefore you got to deal with them. And then suddenly, then you have an environment where you can actually work together in a collaborative way with these other agencies. So I think that's an interesting idea. So buy some real estate and put a marker down that there's other real estate that you want to buy. The problem with that is that if it gets known that you just acquired $1 trillion or something like that, then something that you could have bought on Friday for 300,000 suddenly turns into 3 million to buy it today.
And decimal point jumps about.
Well, particularly people like David Slater, they're not. You know, they make that phone call, find out that your money is real, and the price is, shot up. So how do you deal with that?
Well, it's not easy to deal with it, is it? I mean, my only thoughts on that was to get involved with Mohammed Maroof and his firm, and say to him, look, we want to buy, and give him a list of the things that we want to buy, which I can do, and work out with him how we can do that quickly, without falling into the trap that you just described, which is you could easily fall into. But I mean, generally, there's so much available in and around inside of Sheffield, and I'm not sure how well. I don't know. We just have to start, don't we? And maybe we do have to pay over the odds for something.
Well, I think we did find a way when we were running Premier Hotels. We did find a way to do that. We worked out what amount of money we were prepared to pay for land, and that kind of got out into the community. And people said, well, if you want to work with Premier Hotels, this is the price that you have to come up with. And some people thought, okay, well, I think we can make it work for that. So, and we could say, well, if we can't buy your piece of land, there's another bit of real estate 100 yards down the road where we'd be just as happy to buy that instead of your land. But we're buying today, and do you want to be part of this or not? So I think
there's another thing too. There's another route too, Lucas, that Maroof is keen on, or thinks is the route that will be necessary, and that is down the compulsory purchase route. And I think if we had the resources, I would go to the City Council and the Chief Exec and say, here, we've got the resources. This is what we want to do. We want to do it with you, the local authority. And we need to do it together in order to make it effective. And if you don't want to do it with us, well, we'll go somewhere else where people do want to do it with us.
Go to Barnsley or Rotherham.
Or Rotherham, or both, or do it with them as well. But we don't have to be here in Sheffield. And I think the ideas that we've got for the regeneration of the area are really very good ideas, actually. And I think they will buy into them. And I think once we're in partnership with the council, we can say to those people who are being unrealistic about the value of their properties, look, we'll pay you, I don't know, the going rate or 10% more than the going rate if we decide that. And if you don't accept it, we're going to go down the compulsory purchase route. We know that takes a year or two, but we've started the process. And in the meantime, we're working on another project at the other end of the town, which is, I mean, we've got plenty to do here. We could wait for a little bit while this compulsory purchase thing takes place. So, yeah, I think the council will help us. And I think compulsory purchase, well, my roof thinks that that's the way to go anyway. But of course, I haven't talked to my roof about the scale of what this regeneration means. Because there's, 6, 8 projects, all the significant projects, aren't they? I mean, and if you include feedamillion and this conferencing facility and the housing schemes and additions to the banner building and so on. I mean, you start to talk about significant amounts of money, aren't you? I mean,
well, I don't know. I mean, I've been to a few conferences in a few places, international conferences. The kind of places that stick out in my mind that you're talking about, in a conference center in San Antonio in Texas.
oh
Where the conference facility is associated with the hotel, which has got 5,000 bedrooms. We go to Las Vegas, where they've got 100,000 bedrooms, and they've got conference rooms coming out of your ears, and something to do when you're something to do when you're not when you're not working. So,
well, I remember, they had a conference one weekend for the dentists of America, and it's tens of thousands of dentists arrived looking for hotel bedrooms in Las Vegas, and they have to just take over the place, and that's just the dentist. So we wouldn't be able to compete with that, but we'd be more. I was thinking 2,500, 3,000 bedrooms. Maybe if we do a feasibility study for it, we might find we need more bedrooms than that. We design it in such a way that it can be.
Well, I think this is where the big spenders make a big impact. That's where the emirs of Dubai make a decision on we're going to spend we're going to spend our oil revenues for the next 20 years in turning this from a desert village into an international hub. And they do it over a period of time, and it works. When they finally they burn through their many billions. They have got they've got an international hub of everybody in the world know Dubai, where they didn't know that 30, 40 years ago. So you need to be consistent. You need to have the mindset of an emir, if you like, but you need to have the discretion of what you spend money on and what you don't spend money on. Don't do it casually.
Absolutely.
So you're talking about big bucks, big projects. It's difficult to know. Where we're starting, I think, is actually where I personally believe that you cannot do this just as a commercial operation. It's got to be done in collaboration with local authorities, with universities, things like that. So those are the things we start to have to stitch together. Those kind of relationships while retaining, a sense that we know what we're doing. We've been on this route before. And we can bring money into the table under the right circumstances. And to me, that's the right way. I mean, people say, where's the money going to come from? Well, I think I've made this point before about Sheffield, somebody needs to make it worthwhile for commercial companies to come. The fact that they don't come there is that it's not a lack of money; it's a lack of incentives.
Yeah.
Uh, we're very close to home. Why is Ross, thinking about going to New Jersey or New York rather than to Sheffield? Well, because the incentives are there. The population is there. The low taxation is there. The returns on investment are there. That's where it's profitable. People need to understand that, actually, and they need to make some adjustments. So for me, it's not just collaboration. I mean, what is it that the local authorities need to do? Well, they need to make it attractive, and that's usually, to do things like the Docklands Development Corporation do. Make financial packages simple. Make a minimum of regulations that are required. It's just a thing that interests me about Ukraine and Germany. Germany is notorious for being bureaucratically tickety, but you got to tick so many boxes to build something. I think it took Elon Musk 3 years to get and he had to. Basically, what he did is that he built this, I don't know, 2-3 billion pound facility in Berlin at risk without permissions. He got permission to spend the money, but they didn't give him permission. They only gave him permission when he spent the money and got it all the way through. Finally, got it all the way through, but it was a big risk. They could have said at the end, right, no, take it all down and put it back. We want to keep it as forest. Since the Russians have turned off the gas taps in Germany, suddenly they think, well, stuff like that.
Yeah.
we need an LPG terminal, and we need it like double quick. So forget all the regulations. Build this sucker out on the water line, and 6 months later they got a completely fully working thing. That's actually what you have to do to make things happen. And
well, and why wouldn't we? We haven't got endless lives, have we? We've only got a certain amount of time to get things going.
Well, this is one of the problems. This is one of the things. This is one of the advantages of a war, is that suddenly all the regulations go out the window. And this thing about
it's the same on the health and well-being front. It's threats, isn't it? If there's a threat to people's health and security, I mean, everything shifts. I mean, COVID was a perfect example of that. A world plague and the resources that went into it and the outcomes were just amazing, really. But and people said at the time, we don't have places like conferencing facilities where people with health and well-being as an issue can come together.
So I think this is one of the things that we have to do for, wrapping up the conversation. I think, you've talked about this health and well-being agenda. I've talked about feedamillion. We need to kind of stitch those two together in some way, I think.
It is a key thing, there are already organizations to do with protecting the health for intensive farming, where there's agriculture or vertical farming. There are already organizations that exist whose mission is to watch the healthiness of what's going on, make sure that you're not growing something that, I don't know, is going to harm people. And we see, don't we, from avian flu or swine fever, that intensive farming can wipe out the whole facility within a minute.
Yeah, we've got one here. There's in Monaghan, which is I think it's number 2 in Ireland, counties for chicken farming, turkey farming. They've got an avian flu outbreak in one of the farms there to, I don't know, cull 10,000 birds over the weekend or something like that. You know, I think this is these are parts of these are things which are real instabilities within the current food production system. You know, whether it's intensive chicken farming or whether it's intensive pig production or cattle production. You know, I think there is real instabilities in that. So this is, to me, this is, I am a believer. I mean, I eat meat as much as anybody, and I like, you know, good steak and whatever. But that's, you know, if there was an ethical alternative which tasted good and didn't involve the slaughter of an animal, I'd vote for that straight away. And you know, I think this is one of those things which is going to drive this alternative agricultural revolution. But the thing about that, it is. But the thing about that, you know, I just want to kind of mention is that, you know, since we've been collecting, even just in the last few weeks, examples in the news of initiatives in different areas, you know, including this, what do they call it? I can't remember the name of it. What was it called again? Yeah, this brewery type.
Fermentation.
Fermentation, yeah, the fermentation thing. That's all very well, and that's proven technology. I mean, the little that I've looked at it is actually already proven technology for the production of insulin. And you know, originally, it's interesting to look at the history of insulin production. It started out as being, you know, you had to kill, I don't know, 1,000 cows to get, or some animals. It was a particular thing that was secreted in a pancreas, I think, something like that. And you know, so to start with, it had a big environmental impact. Now it's something that it's a bioreactor, and basically it's in an industrial process, and it's better than what was around there before, because it's predictable and it's not subject to these environmental conditions. So this is the thing, you know, we have to look at in relation to feedamillion. I think is what technologies are capable of being ramped up to scale, and you know, that's
feedamillion.
Has to be able to feed 1 million.
Yeah.
So that's probably enough for the
morning.
For the Monday morning.
You want to get indigestion?
Okay.
Okay, good.
I'll hold it there.